When I first started my career in the 90s, we didn't talk about high order aberrations.
Mhm.
We talked about irregular astigmatism, and we didn't even know how to measure high order aberrations.
When we were looking deeper and deeper into space, not only did we find that it magnified the image that we were intending to look at, but it also magnified the imperfections.
The connection that develops between us and the seminar attendees. And over that time, one of the most important aspects of it is an interactive question answer session at the end where people get to hear other people's questions.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Free Range Vision. I'm Matt Jensen alongside Dr. Vance Thompson. And for nearly 2 decades, we've been pioneering in practice, business, and team leadership. We'll cover everything from the pivotal lessons we've learned to the formidable challenges we've overcome and sometimes lost to, providing you with the essential tools to steer your journey and empower your team as you venture together. So whether you're at the helm of a practice or simply striving to cultivate a stronger culture, well, you found your flock. Let's venture off the beaten path together. Welcome to Free Range Vision.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to our seminar on free range vision. I'm still here with my friend Vance Thompson, and we're talking about how to start a seminar program in your practice, why it's important, how to do it, and what you talk about. We talked a little bit about the marketing impact of a seminar commitment. We talked a little bit about the structure of a seminar. I want to go back now. Okay, because I'm first starting to work on your marketing. It's 2000,
Right.
and you're starting to do these seminars. You've probably done them maybe a year prior, but you're doing them in Rapid City, South Dakota, 5 hours away. You're doing them in, Sioux City, Iowa, 90 minutes south, Watertown. I mean, we're at least 100 miles in every direction of Sioux Falls, but in many cases, just over two. And in towns as big as 150,000 at the time, and to towns as small as 5,000.
Right.
And I remember a lot of weeks where we had Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday seminars. Not every week, but maybe every other week.
Right.
And between you and Dr. Wallen, one of your great optometrists, he's just a titan, and Dr. Keith Rasmussen, who was my very first hire.
Yeah.
I joined you, and like a month later, I'm hiring a doctor.
Yeah.
And he and I both, I mean, we were so young. It's so funny to think of what we've both learned since then. But the three of you are getting all over the countryside with a projector and some slides and a tray of cookies and some Cokes. And having people meet you at the meeting room in the library or the conference room at the Elks Club, or a hotel banquet room, depending on the town. I mean, let's go back. Talk to me about what inspired you to do the seminars, and because at first glance, Vance, I mean, I went and watched them all when I was just doing your advertising. It's a big commitment, and I heard that talk so many times. But you wake up every day, go do clinic and a bunch of surgery, and then before you go home, you do a seminar a lot of the nights.
Right.
Why?
Well, when I was in my refractive surgery fellowship, I remember meeting a guy from Florida who was a refractive surgeon by the name of his last name was Chisholm, Dr. Chisholm. And I remember him saying that he had a philosophy with his team: no seminars, no patients.
Hmm.
And refractive surgery was real new. And so people were hungry for information because there's a patient population out there that really dreams of being less dependent on their glasses or contact lenses. And so he was the first one who told me that. And then I remember telling my fellowship director, Dan Dury, that,
Also a great educator.
yes, amazing. And what Dr. Chisholm said, and he said, well, let's write a seminar. And it was one of my first assignments as a fellow, and this was back before we had PowerPoint. where we would draw out the slides
The
on paper,
carousel.
and then they would, be sent off to make slides.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I did that first draft, and then he sat down and taught me some of the finer details of communicating in a lecture, and what he liked and what he thought could be better, and just was a beautiful mentor that way. And so that's where I kind of first started doing that. And then when I came to Sioux Falls, the seminars ended up being a real important part of my marketing program, because I think it's such a pure form of medical advertising, because anytime you get into medical advertising, it's delicate.
Mhm.
I like to say it's the beginning of informed consent. You don't want to be elevating the expectations inappropriately,
Mhm.
and you want to be able to, yes, talk about some of the life benefits, but at the same time you want to learn about this stuff.
Mhm.
And and so, when you market a seminar, obviously not everybody's going to come to the seminar, but it plants a lot of seeds that, hey, that's a sort of place that is willing to educate. And when, if I ever get interested in it, I would be maybe interested in going to that place. I'm amazed how many people have come to me over the years who never been to the seminar, who heard about me or our practice through the marketing of the seminar. And then, but there's nothing as far as someone who comes in for a consultation. There's nothing like them having been previously to a live in-person seminar with you, and what that does to mature the consultation experience. So the seminars, that's kind of how they evolved into practice. But
Well,
what I may just add,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
with all the the internet, and all the learning online, the philosophy was that it was a new day and age, and seminars maybe had lost some of their relevance.
Mhm. Yeah, and they did. I think that we tried to hold them,
Um,
and then we found people were really interested in maybe a web-based approach. We offered seminars with webinar ability, and that was good for a while. And then it seemed like seminars had either um, grown tired. People had grown tired of seminars, or just chose to consume information differently. Now, there was a resurgent of the web-based ones when we were in COVID. I mean, just we got a lot of people tuning in from not even our marketplaces,
right,
wanting to learn.
right,
But it seems like the last couple of years, and it was really hard to get people to believe that on the doctor side that it's a good idea to do, because it is a commitment of time and resources. That being said, and I think we may have talked about this in a previous session, we've seen data from the Refractive Surgery Council that has said that the searches and the questions that people have about refractive surgery aren't down. And while volumes for refractive surgery are down, it's I don't want to speak for them, but what I infer is that it's because we're not communicating the value to the patient in a way that they're willing to consume it. So we talk about how great it is on our website, but AI and other searches are pulling from places like Reddit and other open forums where we don't have a voice. There's not an educated voice in those social media platforms, the open media platforms. And patients would prefer to hear something in a more authentic fashion. Enter the seminar.
right.
Now, I want to talk about a couple of marketing basics that make the seminar so powerful. So a couple things. One, you mentioned that it's good for you personally, and it was a great way to introduce yourself to the community. I mean, listen, when you give a seminar, when you stand down in front with slides, when the pastor walks up at church, when the teacher walks up to the front of the classroom, there is a yielding of authority that everyone else gives them. By just standing there, you become esteemed. So for listeners, it's excellent branding to be starting from that position, a position of education and authority. And you should. You're the one who's trained. You're the one who's done all of the school work, the lab work, the hands work, the fellowship to be able to do these things. So people want to hear that. So that's one reason. It's good for your brand. Two, seminars have something that nothing else has had that we've worked on together, which is a deadline driven call to action. Now, I wish we had a deadline driven call to action like other industries, like, hey, it's our Black Friday sale. It's only good until midnight tonight, right? and though we never differentiate on price, sometimes just having a deadline would be kind of nice. Well, these have that built in. Our seminar is Thursday at 5:30 at the downtown library in Sioux Falls. Presenter Vance Thompson. And we would promote it just like that on the airwaves and on billboards and in the newspaper. And I think that was really helpful because we would know whether or not our marketing was effective almost immediately, with attendance. Now, just a segue here. One of the things you and I talk a lot about is that's not the only measure of effectiveness. That's the direct, return on investment is we spent this much on the ads and the promotions. We had this many people show up and we had this many people have surgery. A to B to C. C's revenue minus A's cost is my ROI. But what we've learned over time is like that patient you talked about earlier who said, I never went to your seminar, but everybody talked about how great it was. And I always heard about it. Where do we put that patient?
Right.
That's residual branding value, lifetime value of a patient. What about the cataract patient who comes in, having heard about your LASIK seminars, was never a candidate for it, but wants to go to someplace that educates people?
I hear that all the time.
Right. And so there's this residual lifetime value that makes the marketing so powerful that I just warn people, just be careful about how we do our measures. Measures are important and not perfect. So
That's why I like to talk about the planting of seeds.
Yeah, right. Great way of saying it.
Yep.
So we're driving the countryside. I'm pulling into Marshall, Minnesota or Montevideo. I've got to stop at Dr. Beal's practice if you're listening and eat at the local pizza ranch with you. And then that night we're talking to his team who comes to the seminar and also patients in the community who are coming to the seminar. And maybe we have dinner afterwards with a local optometrist or not, but then we come home. First of all, great relationships were established.
Right.
I mean, you and Doug and Keith have become some of my better friends in life because of the windshield time we've shared and how I've been forced to laugh at your jokes, that I feel like you're just a little bit, I mean, they're good, but just a fraction not as good as mine. Just kidding. But I mean, it is good strategy time. And that's where we came up with a lot of the ideas that have now been implemented in your centers
Right.
and just good times. But it was a lot.
Right.
And, it's a lot of coordination, calling all these places and getting treats lined up and having little cards for people to fill out so we can call them back. And, for a while, just keeping those in a shoebox. That was our CRM. I mean, it was old school. But man, it was such a great way to introduce us to the marketplace. And since you've expanded, all those towns also readily know the name of your institution now. And so it's been for a good reason. So branding wise, it's good. It's got a deadline driven call to action. The authority is in the branding. The last thing is that in a marketplace, though it doesn't matter what our competitors do, it's tough to mimic. If you're doing seminars, it's tough for anybody else to say, hey, by the way, I'm also doing seminars over here. So, we're not teaching people how to be competitive with one another. We want to raise the whole, but it's going to be an easier road for those who do it first. And it's a great way to communicate with your ODs in that neighborhood as well. Hey, just so you know, we're doing it. Community education. You should bring your staff. I'd love to see you there if you want. I don't know if I'll introduce you or if you want to, be a part of the presentation because you see a lot of these post-op patients and pre-op patients. It's collaborative care. And so I think in so many ways, it's just a positive.
I do too. And the other thing it does is, some people are intimidated by setting up a consultation for elective surgery.
Hmm.
They don't need to do it. And so to lower that bar to go to a seminar and maybe be just a little bit more anonymous, I think it's a beautiful way to, start their education journey. And yes, they can go online and be even more anonymous. But what's missing there is that magic word we call connecting.
Yeah.
And so when you're in person and you're doing this, it's the same reason, and you've heard me say it before, why people, some choose to go to college in person, some choose to do college, remotely, and some do a hybrid. But that connection of in person, that energy that we give off to each other in person is something that's really special.
Vance, I'd like to head towards something that you did early on, even before I started with you. You had created a sheet that, when I got there, was just Xeroxed. It was kind of front and back, and it was the refractive surgery report card.
Right.
Remember that? And it was basically a line and then a few sentences on a topic, and it was 10 or 15 items that were things that you felt really differentiated you and your commitment to education and technology, and as contrasted to other centers who were in the marketplace, who maybe didn't do those same things, didn't invest in the same technology, maybe charged a lot less. And and I'd like to just get your thoughts on how you decided to come up with that model, a report card for refractive surgery.
Well, basically, we know that there's risks and benefits to having surgery done. And the way to minimize risk and maximize benefit is through quality patient selection and, surgeon experience and then great technology. And in the great technology, the patient selection depends on world-class diagnostics. And, I noticed that some of the centers that were, advertising lower costs didn't have all the diagnostics.
Hmm.
And when it came to the treatments and keeping up with all the advancements and things that, cost extra when you compare good, better, best technology, I always had this passion for any technology that the data showed could improve the accuracy and the safety of the procedure. I was going to get it. And like I would tell patients, it's an expensive philosophy, but it's the only way I would do any of my healthcare
Right.
decisions, and especially, when it comes to surgery, that is permanent. And so I started thinking about, how patients would tell me how they did a little bit of calling around and, you know, some of the centers were, half the price and they were confused why. I even had patients that were maybe even a little bit more sophisticated in their questioning saying, you know, I noticed that, you know, Dr. Thompson's place, he has this technology and they would explain why they didn't think that was necessary. And that made a light bulb go off that, you know, that person was making a more educated decision.
Hmm.
So I thought what I would do is make a very simple list of the technologies that I thought were important and also, the philosophies that, were important.
Techniques.
Yeah. So that the patients would have kind of the big stuff right in front of them so that when they made those phone calls and they did their shopping, which, I highly advise, I think it's good to, do your research and research your various options in your region, that they would do it in an educated fashion. Because what I would explain to patients is I just don't want you to think you can get the way I'm doing it for less.
Right.
And so if you
That would
decide
feel bad.
that would feel bad, and not only that, when you see someone who's had problems, and you're not going to meet any surgeon that has a pristine, perfect track record as far as
Hmm.
everybody healing perfectly. We're all trying really, really hard to minimize problems. And so, but when you would see people coming in, with problems that could have been prevented,
Hmm.
you would, want to, do whatever you can to help educate people to not go cheap on your health care. And
Hmm.
here's a list of things that as you do your research, you can ask about. And then when you listen to their answers, you have a decision to make. about which way you want to do it.
Now you're informed.
Now you're informed. Exactly.
And that's the power of an educated patient, which is one of your mantras. I'm just going to share an example because it's not technology based. We're not going to do that on this show, kind of pit people against each other. Although there has been companies that have invested in real, important investments, and others that over time didn't, but maybe have committed to other things since. So I mean, the market changes. It's the doctor who makes the commitment to new
Right.
technologies. But I remember one time somebody said, "Well, they're a lot cheaper." And a couple of questions that I had asked just in passing is, what if you need a little fine tune? Because some people need fine tunes. And they said, well, I asked them about fine tunes, and they said they've never had to do one.
Wow.
And I said, well, did they say what they would do if you were the one who had to have one? He said, yeah, it'd be full price again. Well, no wonder they never do them, right? It's because you've already paid full price, although it's lower. And then if you wanted to get a little fine tuned to take it from the 5 yard line into the end zone, you have to pay full price again. Well, that patient is probably feeling pretty upset that they're not all the way there. And so the likelihood of them wanting to do that second surgery is probably pretty low. And so while that provider might feel like they're being, completely transparent about not having any enhancements, I always felt like, I don't remember what our enhancement rate, but that we had a 6% enhancement rate, but that it was included,
Right.
for a certain number of years. It's just one example of a question to ask.
Right.
And you might feel comfortable feeling like you're going to be one of the people who won't need a little fine tuned enhancement. Um, but it's those 15 things that you just want to know why it might be a little bit less there because, 6 or 10% of the time we're doing enhancements and they're not. And there's some costs involved.
Well, and it actually makes me, think about why I think the seminars are so good too, because this idea of an informed decision, when you just, try to cram everything into a consultation, it's sensory overload.
Right.
It's so much information. So to be learning this through your online research and to maybe even supplement it with a seminar and then come in for a consultation and supplement it even more and then do your contemplation, thinking, praying about whether or not it's for you, is a nice stepwise approach that helps you demystify and make a great any medical or surgical judgment.
hmm Well, and I think at the end of the day, progress or the measure isn't necessarily, how many did we book? Again, that's a short term. That's a measure. That's an ROI kind of question. But more, how many satisfied learners did we have? Because some people may find through your seminar, um, this is more than I thought. I better kind of cool my jets for a little bit, or I'm willing to take the risk and go someplace cheaper. Or like you said to my wife in a seminar in 2003, I think I'm actually too high of a correction for LASIK.
Yeah,
I better wait for one of those implants to come
yeah.
out, for my higher correction vision. And you did. It wasn't even FDA approved yet, and you said I would wait. And a lot of doctors would have just done the LASIK back then. And I just think it's proof positive that the commitment that you say you have and the commitment that you have to education actually rules your activity in the day to day. And that's one of the things that have been such a pleasure to observe in you over the last 25 years, buddy.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I know how much I love education. But can I tell you a story about that made me realize how much I really love education?
Yeah.
And so I went to Lamar's, Iowa,
hmm
to do a seminar, and
Ice
these
cream capital of the world.
right, yes, yes, great steakhouse too, and Archie's.
Archie's. Yeah. A lot of Christmas parties there.
um, but and seminars were preceded with marketing and this and that, and I got to the seminar and I got set up, and I had one patient come. So I got to know them and I started my seminar, and I absolutely loved that seminar, and I found myself putting everything into it as if I was doing a seminar like we had the other day with 100 people
hmm
at our, atrium here in Sioux Falls. And but it was one person, and they ended up having an issue that I could really help them with, and I treated them, and the number of people they've sent over the years. but I enjoyed that one-person seminar a lot.
Well, and that's something I think is an important lesson for everybody, is because there's doctors out there, there's teams out there, there's administrators out there that would have looked at their marketing team and said, that was a fail. That wasn't worth our time for one person. But the way you communicated with them, the way you connected with them, the way we put messages in front of the rest of the community,
Exactly.
right, to seed it for next time.
Exactly.
The way we gave air cover to the optometrists in that marketplace who are also talking about refractive surgery. We'll never really know the full effect of the impact of that messaging. But I'm glad you can look at it like that, because it gives everybody license to continue to think about it.
Right.
'Cause some things are going to work better than others, but keep chipping away, and
Right.
you'll never regret educating people.
Right. Do you
We-
think I'm hopelessly optimistic that a one-person seminar?
Yes, I do.
Because it reminds me of when, nobody would play with me as a kid, and my parents would tie a bone around my leg for the neighborhood dogs to play with me.
I know.
And I was so excited
sad.
about it.
And boy, did that dog get a lot of good information. Educated. I know that's not true, because I know a lot of your childhood friends. But listen, I mean, the thing is that I do think it's, we haven't talked about how invigorating it's been for your team. But when they hear you talking about these things, the things you say every day on the consult, but not everybody hears it. And then they hear you say it on the platform in front of the community. They hear that a few times, they become zealous for the same standards. Really good for everybody. And so again, I think it's to your credit that you'd be excited about the one. I think it speaks a lot to your character. And I would challenge people to try to take on the parts that they can of that character, because you're going to try new things in your communications in 2026, and some of them might work better than others. But you'll never regret educating people. You'll never regret trying to encourage your team in it. And marketing, like you said, Vance, it's the beginning of informed consent.
And it's really enjoyable. And to have a comprehensive plan to educate your team, to educate the doctors that you work with, and to educate your community, it's a really great way to grow a practice and keep a practice healthy.
Mm-hmm. So as we look at 2026, Vance, I want you to, I want you and everybody else to be thinking about what's new. What could we be talking to people about? I mean, there's all kinds of new things in the category of comprehensive refractive surgery. What a fun thing to say, right?
Right.
Depending on your age and your vision, there's chances are there's something that can benefit you. There's a ton to talk about in the kind of growing interventional glaucoma space that can really help a lot of patients who are, frankly, they're suffering because they're not taking drops in a way that's therapeutically viable, right? Or there's adverse events. And there's some things that can really help them with that. That, by the way, can help your practice's bottom line as well. So it's extremely benevolent. And then don't look now, there's also a lot to talk about when it comes to premium technology, advanced technology in cataract surgery. Unlike LASIK, cataract surgery has a trigger. People come in frustrated with their vision. That's more of a trigger, and insurance pays for it than we have in LASIK. And so, training your team, training your community, training referring doctors on what to look for in premium. If that's your only effort in 2026, it will be a worthy one. Alcon's report at the end of 2023 said only 51% of likely cataract candidates know that they have an option when looking at cataract surgery, an option between just monofocal vision and some spectacle freedom. After 20 plus years, we are not there as far as people understanding their options. So a lot more that we have to talk about, my friend. Thanks for another great session.
Absolutely amazing.
Happy
Matt.
birthday
Thank you.
month.
Yeah, thank you so much.